So, what have you been up to? Anyway, I've seen you had done quite a few interviews recently with some decent. You interviewed Emma right after the European
Yeah.
semi-finals, right?
Yeah, I just so I stopped doing 2 episodes a week a while ago. Because it was just like I was just gonna run aground. And then semi-finals were on, and I was like, God, wouldn't it be cool if I could interview? And it was actually Royce messaged me and I messaged him saying, "Oh, congrats on Torian," and he replied and was like, "Oh, we should do a recap episode." And I was like, "Oh, that'd actually be kind of interesting to hear like quickly after the fact how it felt, and like because it's freshest." So I did that with him, and then I was like, God, I wonder is there anyone else I could do it with? So then after Granite, I reached out to Ariel Lowen that won that, and she was keen. And then kind of became a personal challenge of like, well, who else can I get? And then when Emma won, like that was an easy ask because like she's very good. She's very like patient and kind with her time. And I just interviewed Vellner yesterday after Atlas. So that was a bit of a reach now because I messaged him, like I kind of chat to him a little bit like the odd time, just back and forth, but not major. So I kind of wasn't sure if he'd be keen, but yeah, he was, and he was really patient with his time as well. But it's great. I think like you never, because like if you ask someone 2 months after an event, they might be like, yeah, God, favorite event. What was my favorite event? Whereas if you ask them like 3 days later, it's really fresh in their head and they're still sore. Like they still got DOMs and stuff. So
what did Emma say about the travel? Like I've seen pretty much all the European people posting about, that's going to be, it's difficult. Looking like it's going to be a real challenge for people to actually get to America.
It's just a bit of a shit show. Like, so I kind of didn't realize because like, okay, Ireland, we're fairly strict on travel coming in. There's that 2-week hotel quarantine thing for a lot of places. But like say the USA was taken off the list and Canada was taken off the list last week. So I don't know, like obviously wrongly, I assumed that was reciprocated, that like, okay, well, if they can come here, we can go there. But and then especially when I saw Sam Briggs had been in Ireland doing it, and then like on the Monday was like back in Ohio or whatever. So I was like, oh, it's obviously fine then. And then when I was talking to Emma, I said, oh, when do you think you'll go out to Sam? I assume you're going to Sam to get ready or whatever. When do you think you'll go there? And she was like, well, we don't know if we can yet. And I didn't realize.
Okay.
So like, if you look on the list on the US website, it's like the UK, China, India, and then it was like Europe including, and it's literally every country in Europe is just listed like one after the other.
Cannot go in.
Yeah, can't fly in.
Okay.
So what they're hopeful that, so there's 3 possible plans. So plan A is the rules change and the US government relax the rules a bit because like so much of their population is vaccinated. I think their main concerns is Indian variant, that like they're just freaking out a bit about that. So plan A is they change the rules and they say, look, it's fine. We'll relax it, or even relax it partially. Say like, if they say like, oh, France can come, couldn't they go to France for a week and then go to America or whatever, something like that. Plan B is CrossFit are getting involved with, I don't know, foreign affairs or whatever department in America to try and explain, because like say there was a strongman competition in California and that was fine because it's a recognized sport, so they were all allowed to travel from anywhere. But CrossFit isn't a recognized sport, so they can't.
Yeah.
So CrossFit are like liaising with whoever to like, they're fighting their corner and they're like, come on, like there's however 30 athletes or 60 athletes that need to come over from all over different parts of the world or whatever. We can't just have only Americans here or whatever. So that's plan B. And then I think plan C is to fly to Dubai and stay there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've heard that from the Swedish people as well, that is an option.
That's the closest point of entry, which is ridiculous to say. But
he's even like, they still need to do quarantine in America.
Yeah, I think it's self-imposed, so like you can just stay at someone's house for a week. Whereas Dubai, I don't know what it's like in Dubai, but like what would, like you've like prepared for competitions and you've prepared for the games and stuff, like how disruptive would that be if you're a European athlete and you have to go to Dubai for 2 weeks first and then go to America?
I mean, it's definitely Dubai right now as well, or right before the games, is going to be so hot. And I don't know how I don't know how easy it's going to be to get into the gyms either, because like Dubai they had like very tight restrictions by the look of it. So I don't know if the gyms are just sort of accepting, drop-ins and stuff. But I'm sure those high caliber athletes would be able to find somewhere to train. But I mean, if they have to go to Dubai and then only be in a hotel, like if they're not allowed to, if they have to quarantine in Dubai, like self-isolate, then that would be like extremely. I mean, it's better than not getting there, but like to fly. I mean, the time zone difference to Dubai is really not that bad. That's not a bad flight at all. But then from Dubai then to America is like that's not an easy flight, easy travel. Yeah, I think you got to get to Chicago and then a couple of hours drive as well. So it's definitely not an easy route to get there, but you got to do what you got to do. Like it's better than not going.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of, even you think of the Australians, like they've all set up like GoFundMe style pages or whatever, just because the cost is so astronomical that like, it's, I suppose you're kind of hopeful that obviously like CrossFit, it's not like you could argue it's not their problem or whatever, but like it's their sport and it's their event and it's their, they're putting on the show. So I suppose you kind of hope that they'd be, I don't know, more active in doing something about it. Like obviously they can't change the prices of people getting there, but they could maybe help out, or they could like get a fund going or something for everyone. Like,
I mean, anyone outside of the top 5 who's not American is probably going to be making a massive loss on going to the games, which for some people, like, I don't know if it would matter to me. Like when I went to the games, like I spent a lot of money because I wanted to go to America for 6 weeks before. And just be there and enjoy the whole experience. And I didn't win anything, but that was fine to me. But like this is like when you're talking about a travel from Australia, like right now, then it's insane money. And like for the teams, probably even less financially supported by sponsors. It's going to be a big ask. Like I cannot see the team competition being full at the games.
Do you think will they backfill it with like US teams or something then, or just leave it?
No, I hope they don't.
I
think it should just be, I mean, if they're going to backfill it, it should at least offer it to the regions that qualified, or just I just think just leave it. Like if they can't get there, then they can't get there. Not just backfilling with.
You could just put a laptop in their lane and have them do it on Zoom.
They're doing like a join in from. They announced something, right? That you can join in from home at the CrossFit Games this year or something. So
maybe that's why they're doing it.
Yeah. Whether you qualified or not, you join in from home.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the programming over the weekend? Like West Coast was the only live one that we had online.
It was interesting. I I kind of assumed, we talked about it like way back, but I assumed when the European events are on the same day as Brazil that they'd be the same, but that Atlas would be different because it's not the same day. There was like a 2-week gap. And I talked to Vellner and I was like, was that an advantage? Like, obviously it's not an advantage against the people in his field because they all have the same advantage, but like he was saying how unique it was to be able to look at, say, Bjorgvin or Jana and think, okay, what's possible to achieve here, and to have times in your head going in, especially when it's a lone competition where you're just doing it yourself, most of them. I think he did 2 workouts with Adam Davison. He actually told a funny story where I think it was the GHD one where Adam Davison went out like way too hot. But Vellner like matched his pace, was like, oh, okay, we're doing this, and like kept up with him. And he was like, it was the worst decision. Like it was just so bad. But he was, talking about how unique it is. The difference, like when you're going head to head with someone, you lift your game because you're like, oh shit, they're going unbroken, I better go unbroken, or like something like that might happen, or they're going a little bit faster than you intended, so you try and keep up. And he was saying he kind of had a touch of that with the online thing because he was able to see what Bjorgvin had done, and he was able to see, like, it was actually interesting. He was saying that Yana, like he looked at the workouts and he thought like, right, what's the ceiling of possibility? Like what's the if everything goes absolutely perfectly, what could the perfect person do with those workouts? And he was like, Janikowski across all the semifinals impressed me the most because he hit the ceiling of all the things that I thought were possible for all the workouts. He was like,
Yeah.
I was incredibly
I guess
impressed.
apart from the snatch
The
event, Yonna
snatch, yeah.
was extremely impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I would love to know what the guidelines were that CrossFit. So each semi-final was allowed to program independently, and they were supposed to have these guidelines, I guess, so that they were all pretty similar. But
Yeah.
I felt like the online programming was very different to the live programming.
Yeah.
When you look at, and I think the main reason when I thought about it, so the online one, the time domains were definitely pushed a little bit longer. Like if you look at the top times for West Coast Classic and especially Granite Games, I think Granite Games is all 6, 7, 4, 3, 8. I think the longest event was like 10 minutes. And West Coast Classic, if you take out that ruck run, which I also thought was a little bit not strange to have in there, but none of the other events had this like really long single modality event. If you look at just the CrossFit events, were also pretty short. And then you had the online stuff tested quite a lot. Like you had 3 workouts or 2 workouts essentially in like the 12 to 15 minute range, and then one in like 20 to 25 minutes. Like even the best times were like 19 minutes on the I guess that the rope climb, rowing. So like the online programming was definitely a little bit different to the live events, and I think that would have played if everybody did that online, if everybody did the same programming. I think you would have seen, especially events like Granite Games, a different outcome at the top of the leaderboard. And I think West Coast as well, because that was West Coast, I thought was very similar in, I think you had 3 events that were all like a real sprint finale finish style event. And obviously that, lends itself to a certain type of athlete or a certain type of fitness. So I'm not sure after the whole thing, whether having that independent programming, I don't know how fair it was, or if it could have been, better. Like I ended up liking that the online stuff was all the same.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's interesting. I suppose like when you say that about the like the thing with West Coast Classic was they tried to pick, so they're all rehashes or like revamps of previous workouts.
Yeah.
And if you ask people like, well, most people, what's your favorite memory from regionals or games or whatever, it is those sprint finishes. It is those like edge of your seat like sprints or whatever. So it's going to be hard to avoid picking those. I think the same. So it was Dylan programmed Granite and West Coast Classic, and he said that they got a lot of flack for not having a long event, but that their long event was the back-to-back, and that they said like CrossFit were like, you need to have a long event, and they said these two are our long event, like together. And then CrossFit were like, oh, okay, that's fine, you just got a rest in the middle, that's fine. So I think from what I understand, that CrossFit basically said, all right, you need to have this many events, you need to have this many within this time cap, and you need to have, I mean, I assume there was some deal made with Rogue over that torque tank because it was just everywhere. And I assume they also wanted to have legless rope climbs in some capacity because they were everywhere. And they wanted to have a sprint, like a sprint. And in the online one, that was Gretel. And then in the in-person one, they all had their own different versions of that. But, you say like that, it lends itself to a certain athlete. But like, if you looked on paper, like Fikowski did incredibly well in Gretel, and he shouldn't have. Like, it's not his style of workout. He's a big guy. It's not something that he excels at. And he like, that's the workout that got him into the games, because he was always going to do well on number 6. But like, for him to like, I think he was only a second behind Vellner on Gretel.
Yeah.
And like that's the workout that got him in, because he pulled himself up from like wherever he was, 15th on Friday. And it was
I think
because of
that is
that.
the one performance that I wish would have been live, because it would have been so, if it had played out the same way live, that comeback from Brent over those, it wasn't in, I think he was, how low was he after day
I
one?
think he was 15th or
Maybe
14th or something.
14th,
Yeah.
15th, yeah. Like pretty low, where you're like, okay,
Now
that's a lot of work to
he was
do.
never going to excel on the first two workouts. We're never going to be like, oh well, he's going to be in first, like. But I think he had hoped he wouldn't be as low as he was.
Yeah.
And even from talking to Vellner, he said that Brent rang him on the Saturday, and Pat was like, that's not like him. Like, he must have been nervous, because he wouldn't ring and be like, oh, what do you think of this score? Like, because they say Pat said that he did one on Thursday, and then, or two on Thursday, one on Friday. He was finished competing by like Saturday. So before he had 3 workouts done before the first leaderboard refreshed. So they were like,
because of like the time zone.
Yeah, they were ahead of themselves or whatever. So he was finished like Saturday. He was finished pretty much. And he had time if he wanted to do another one, but he was like, I was happy enough. But he said that Brent was ringing him, and Brent told him his Gretel time, and Pat was like, you're fine. Like, I did a second faster than you. You're fine. There's not going to be, because again, the benefit of the European ones being first is like Pat was able to look and say, I beat BKG in every workout. I must be doing okay, even though he hadn't seen his own leaderboard. So like, it's a bonus. But yeah, I think the like, I'm a sucker for like those edge of your seat moments. So like West Coast Classic, like I absolutely loved it. It looked like Berlin regionals. It looked like that indoor Coliseum-y kind of feel to it. I really like that. I think for the same reasons that I really liked Granite Games, is because it looked like the outdoor field, like that big, like long lanes and stuff. But yeah, I think like Torian and West Coast Classic were brilliant events to watch. I think Granite was a great event because you didn't know who was going to win, or like it was just so up in the air all the time. And I think the West Coast Classic, for similar reasons, like you look at Cedric Lapointe, like his comeback was insanely good.
Yeah.
And then even Cole Sager, I think if you're going into that event and you ask people, you show them the list of athletes, say who's going to win, I don't think many people would have picked Cole Sager out.
I think most people will say Noah, right?
Yeah. I think
he looked like he was in really great shape going into it.
Yeah.
Like,
but that was exciting,
that was impressive,
like watching him. And then, like, I suppose, like, you could argue, the ruck run, like, it wasn't exactly the biggest like spectator pleaser, because similar to when there's a long event at the games where you're just kind of sitting looking at the screen, like, there's not much going on. But the coverage was amazing, because you had Hinshaw, who was like talking, just like spitting bars left, right, and center, where you're like, oh geez, that's so insightful. And then same with when Fraser was on, like, those, for the spectator at home, West Coast Classic was fantastic, because you got all this amazing insight, and then you got these really exciting events as well.
I think events do need, regionals did kind of go that way towards, the later it got in the regional stage. And then once you got to the sanctionals, you do need those boring events, because otherwise you do end up only testing
sprints,
a sprints, or a little bit longer than the sprint, that sort of. And I understand that it's easier on the online one to do longer events because you're not restricted by a time schedule, which, from organizing competitions myself, like, that is probably the hardest thing to do, is to fit really good workouts into actually have them run logistically, like, smooth throughout the day. So I think that is why when you go to a live event, that the time domains were all a little bit shorter. But I think they do need that sort of, I would have liked, because West Coast used that long, they used that really long run. And I think that the online stuff, having the really long, the rowing, handstand walk, and legless rope climbs, I would have liked the other events to also have had that really, really long aspect in there, just to sort of even it out a little bit. Because I think that is a huge something like a ruck run, just equally like a 1 rep max snatch, can really flip around the leaderboard because it's very specialist. So I would have liked to, I don't know, maybe a little bit more uniformity, but overall, I think I think the events were really, really good.
I think it was better than people expected it to be as well. Like, I think people were like, I don't know, people maybe didn't know what to expect. And then some people were expecting like regionals, and then some people were expecting, no, it's going to be more like sanctionals or whatever. I think like to marry two different formats, they did pretty good, like with what they came out with for the first go as well.
Yeah, first year.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the last chance qualifier looks like, because they've kind of played so many of their cards, like with the quarterfinals.
Not heard anything about that, and it's like, is it going to be just another brutal weekend? Like the online semi-final was a brutal test of 6 really tough workouts, and the last chance is in a week from when this comes out, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a tough turnaround, and like, are they going to go? I don't know if they need 6, 7 events again, or whether they do a 2-day or even just a 1-day with maybe 4 events or something, like, and just get it all done in like a 24, maximum 48-hour window.
Even if they just did it, like, say 3 workouts over, like, you just have to have them all in by Sunday, and then one of them's short, one of them's mid-range, and one of them's longer, and just see what comes out. Because you can overcomplicate it as well, I suppose, and especially when you consider that that's in a week, but then the games is like 2 weeks after that,
3 weeks after that.
It's like, it's not a lot of time to rest, recover, ramp up. Like, so if there's 4 weeks left now until the games, or less if you're doing the last chance qualifier, like, what do those 4 weeks look like in an ideal scenario? So obviously there's going to be people who are stuck, that they can't get to America as soon as they want, or they might have to go to a hotel or whatever. But like, in an ideal scenario, 4 weeks after the games, when do you stop? When do you like taper down? Or how hard do you go for these 4 weeks? Or does your focus shift on something different just?
I mean, yeah, like you said, that the ideal situation is like getting out to America as soon as possible, for all the little details, getting settled in an Airbnb or whatever it is, getting used to the slight changes. I mean, America is not going to be difficult to get food and stuff, but still making those small adjustments, getting yourself I would recommend getting a little training squad, because you don't really go back into training mode. I think you kind of stay in competing mode, really. Like, you're hitting everything with a high intensity, getting yourself as ready as possible to compete at the highest level. So if you can find a small group of people that are also qualifying for the games, to really push you along, you keep that motivation so high every day. And then more variance as well, like the training for the Open, the training for continentals, is that semifinals? Forgot what the official word was training for semifinals. It's definitely more limited than training for the games. So now, looking through, I saw Andre did something similar to what I would have done, just printing out all of the previous tests that they've used at the games, and seeing like, okay, what have I never done before? Because you want to try and touch on different stuff. Like, have I got myself onto a paddleboard and done some swimming, like prone paddleboard, stand-up paddleboard? Have I got onto a mountain bike or a road bike or a cyclocross? Like, if you can get some help in all those little things that you're probably not doing that often, unless you are one of the athletes that knows, I'm going to the games every year because I'm the best person in my region. Someone like Tia can do those things probably year round because she knows that she's going to get to the games, so she can take a little bit of time away from the open style training or regional style training to hit that games training year round. Whereas someone who has been fighting all that time to just get to the games probably hasn't spent the time touching on, okay, now you've got to be ready that you're going to do probably a run, swim, run or something like that. Like how much swimming have you done? How much biking have you done? How much strongman type of stuff have you done? So it's trying to just touch on all those elements that might come up. And to be honest, you probably will still miss something, but at least you're as prepared as possible for all the different type of things that could get thrown at you, while still being really good at just pure CrossFit.
Yeah. If you're training, say 6 days, do you just do a morning, say 3 days a week, where you do something different, where you do like a run or a cycle or both or a swim or whatever, and then continue your afternoon sessions as like, your open style training or your competition style training?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessary that it has to be, okay, mornings is this, afternoons is that. Like, if that ends up fitting people's schedules better, but also if you can, flip it around a little bit, so you get used to, okay, I need to be able to swim at the end of a day when I'm pretty beat up and sore from all the previous stuff that I've done earlier in that day, not just, okay, I always feel great when I go out and run or swim at 8 a.m. in the morning, but when I have to do it at the end of the day after I did friendly Fran at lunchtime, like, okay, now how does my running feel? And little things like that. It's just a learning process, and that's why it takes years and years and years. And that's what the best people, that's why they are the best, because they know their paces, they know what their 5K pace is when they're completely fresh, or when they've done a 2-day competition and, okay, now I have to run 5K, what can I realistically hold? And that's just gathering experience, I think, in competing.
Yeah. Who are your picks to win after watching the semifinals?
I mean, Jason Hopper was probably the region that he was in was absolutely stacked. Yeah. And to win in the style that he did, he smashed every event. I think the only event he didn't come like top 4 was Gretel. And I think that's because he tripped over the barbell.
Yeah.
Vellner looked in really good. Vellner's scores were like really, really solid. If I had to say for the guys now, I would go Jason Hopper. This is not in any order because I'm not sure about the order. Let's say Jason Hopper, Vellner, and I want to say it's going to be Jonne Koski's year.
I think he has a good chance.
I wanted him to be able to push that potential for a long. Like he's such. I've trained with him from training with him. Like he's such a good athlete. Like he's so impressive, the things that he can do, and I would like him to be able to get a result at the games that reflects like just how good he is.
Yeah, I asked.
And then the girls. I mean, it's hard to look, not to look past Tia.
Yeah. For
the win, I would really like to see Cara Saunders on the podium again. And then I think someone again like Kristen Holte, I think is just so impressive and consistent.
Those 3 Vegas girls really showed their mettle at the weekend as well. Like that's that
was a really good battle between
but even it was incredible watching. Like I think there was like 3 different events where it was literally 1, 2, 3 running towards the next thing and no one else was with them, and then the next event it would be like the same 3 but in a different order running to the next apparatus or whatever. Like they've married that perfect mix of like competing against each other while training but not taking it too far. Like Justin's obviously really got his head screwed on there.
That's impressive.
I remember asking John Singleton ages ago, before Matt had retired, who's the next games champion not called Matt Fraser, and he said Janikowski, and that was like Matt was still around. There was no talk of retirement or whatever. So yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be cool to dig out that audio.
Who's your top 3 then?
Mine.
Yeah.
I think if everything goes well, and it rarely does, I think Vellner could win. I just think he's never had as good a chance. And from talking to him, he sounds like he knows he's never had as good a chance, but it's not phasing him. And I think that's the important part. I think there's other people who might crack a little bit because it's like, oh shit, like there's like the person who usually steps in and takes this isn't stepping in. I have to hold everyone else off. I think, I think Werner would win. I think Jana is going to be somewhere on the podium, if not in first. And then it depends. You see, it's so hard. Like Hopper was so impressive, but it's literally the only time I've ever seen him compete. Like I've nothing else to base it off. So I think
But
because
I
of
just think
that,
like
I think I
he
go for
looks like
Medeiros.
Fraser looked. He looks like Fraser looked when he stepped up. Like,
yeah,
you hadn't really heard of Fraser in 2000, and I think he did compete in 13, but on 2014, I remember the regionals that he did 2014, it was like, wow,
yeah,
this is impressive. And I think that Jason Hopper looked like that.
yeah. I think just because I've seen him and just because I know what he's capable of, and because I think he hasn't peaked yet, I think Medeiros will be there thereabouts.
Yeah.
On the women's side, I think Cara is the only one that can put it up to Tia. I think she's the only one, and I think Tia is going to get a bit of a shock when she competes against her head to head, having not done it for so long. And I think as well, there's a big chasm between the USA and what people in the USA know about once it leaves the west or east coast. They're just like, oh, apparently there's someone in Australia that's good. So I think like when Torium was on, I don't know how much attention people paid to it. So I think Cara might just kind of fly under the radar a little bit and won't.
Tia would have paid attention to it.
Yeah,
you think?
but I mean, like I think like the general field and the commentators and everyone else, I don't think there'll be a huge amount of pressure put on her to do anything. And I think she's in a really good, from just looking at the stuff she's posting, she seems to have her priorities right, and she seems to understand like that. She just seems to have a really good balance of things. And I'd love to see Haley Adams on the podium as well, because I think just she's like, she looks like she just got off a bus from a school trip and like wound up on the competition floor, but she's so strong and has so much determination and so much like just ridiculous fitness. But I always find her amusing because it's like she just looks like she shouldn't be there, but she's just an incredible athlete. Like,
I would agree with those. I think it'd be, and like I'm so excited for the guy side this year. Like, obviously,
if you ask 10 people who's going to win the men's, you'll probably get 10 different answers. And it's never been like that.
You've not had that for the last 10 years then, I guess, right?
Yeah. It's I wonder as well, I know that it was kind of, I get the impression it was kind of Glassman's thing, but I wonder will they do like just a random wild card and like invite someone that, you know, didn't qualify or whatever. Not like Hunter, but I mean like someone like Ben Smith or, you know, that kind of thing. It'd be,
I don't know if you'll see that.
Is there anyone that's shocked you that hasn't qualified?
I don't know, actually. Not like nothing that's been shocking given the circumstances of like each region. Like I think anyone who's not qualified has been in a really tough battle. I can't think of anyone. Do you know someone like off the top of your head?
No, but I don't know if you follow fantasy fitnessing. They're so they do like, it's basically like fantasy football. So they do a bracket and you pick you know, say Emma McQuaid, Kristen Holte, they seed the athletes and you pick, and then however many points they get, you get. So then there's a league table at the end of the weekend. So at the minute, they're doing a top 19 like global leaderboard of like if everyone was in the same leaderboard, and even though the workouts are different, like, but if everyone is in the same leaderboard, who would be where and how would they have performed? So like, is there someone who's, you know, maybe an 8th in one of the European ones, but if they were in Torian would have finished in 5th, or, you know, like, is there, you know, that kind of way. So they haven't released it yet, but they said they're doing it. So, but they're actually a good page to follow. It's similar to Brian Friend, and, you know, it's just like nerdy shit that like people.
Has anyone done a leaderboard? Has anyone done a leaderboard? Because obviously you're in a very unique situation in Europe where the workouts were the same. You did them online, so the situation is the same. Has anyone done a comparison of the two leaderboards yet and seen, you know, if
Emma would have Emma would have finished 3rd in the other
on the other leaderboard?
Yeah, I know that because I kind of,
Okay.
well, I roughly worked it out. Obviously, someone would have to move over to the other leaderboard if she moved in, but you know what I mean? I worked out that she would have had the same finish in all her events, except her event win, which is important because it's 100 points, would have only been a fourth place finish. So
Okay.
that would have moved her down, and I had it like roughly. I had her down as third, but that was the only major shift. But then if you look at there, where Pat was saying he beat BKG's scores in all the workouts, so like it'd be interesting to compare Atlas to
Yeah.
Lowlands
I
or
think
whatever.
I took a look at, I think, Pat and Jonna's score, and I think they kind of went 1 for 1.
Yeah.
I think pretty much like it was very, but then I don't know how big the difference would have been if you just swapped them over. Like, for example, the snatch, I think Jonne's score would have been much lower on the Atlas.
Oh, so people would come between them, like, yeah.
But other than that, I think they went pretty much, and then Jonne's Gretel score was almost too good for the other lead, like any leaderboard, because he beat everyone by like, I don't know, 15 seconds or something on that workout, which was pretty
crazy.
It's crazy.
It's a crazy gap to have in such a short workout.
Like it was like when he did Randy at the European regionals, like back in 2015, and he just smashed everyone. Like he's so good at that sort of stuff. It will be very, very interesting to see the boys, the girls as well, but the boys, I think this year is going to be it's just going to be different to what it has been for the last 10 years. You've been pretty much, apart from a small gap in the middle of that, you've been pretty much talking about who's fighting for second and third place. So to have the whole thing kind of up for grabs is, unless the wild card you were talking about ends up being Fraser.
Yeah, there's a lot of that on the YouTube comments when he was doing his commentary, which he said he'd never do, by the way. He was like, I will never, like, I remember him mocking commentators, being like, oh, what, you want me to say this isn't going to suit him because he's a short athlete, and this isn't going to suit him because he's a tall athlete. He's like, I'm not getting involved in that shit. And then, like, if West Coast Classic comes along and he does commentary at it. But yeah, there's a lot of comments on YouTube saying like, oh, Fraser's about to throw the headphones and run over the finish line first. Like, that it was like, it is interesting when he's like out of, well, he still looks in pretty good shape, but he's obviously not conditioned to throw down at that level. But like, we all know he'd probably still win even if he just like did it. But it's kind of, I wonder then, would that take anything away from, like, if you won, would that question mark annoy you that people will say like, oh, well, what if Fraser was still competing?
I mean, people are like, haters are going to say that this year no matter what, aren't they? But like, I don't think that, like, at some point the best person is going to retire and then the next generation carries on. That will probably get said more if someone like, I don't know, if someone like Vellner or Noah Olsen, who's been doing it for a really long time, if they win, then you'll get people saying, not everyone, like very few people, throw those sort of comments out there. But if someone completely surprises, someone like Jason Hopper, who's kind of come onto the scene, then the question will be like, oh, this would have been amazing to see. Then what? But then what would the story have been if Fraser had still been around? Just like people wanted to always know, what would have happened if Ronan stayed. But you're always going to have those questions in sport.
Because even like last year or in 2019, I remember people were saying that when Noah was wearing the leader's jersey, people were like, it's only because of the new system, the new cuts. It's like, come on, like, he's just playing the game how he's supposed to play it. Like,
yeah, it's all about, it's a new, this sport doesn't carry on year to, like, you don't get to keep points from previous years or anything like that. It's, it starts again every year, and this is the cards that are being dealt, and whoever can come out on top, deserves that credit, whether there's cuts or whether there's not cuts or whether it's sanctionals, regionals, whatever it is.
God, imagine they did cuts this year. I really hope to God they don't, after charging people like $4,000 to fly over. Imagine saying like, one workout, you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll do cuts, but like they could do minimums, like not like cuts as in, okay, bottom 10 are dropping out, but like they could easily do minimum standards. Like they've had that on workouts before. Where I think it was the obstacle course in 2000 and I don't know
18, I think, yeah.
18. And if you didn't get over a certain obstacle, then that was it. And I think a couple of people went out on that, and that was pretty.
Yeah.
I don't know how early it was in the competition, to be fair, but like still getting cut would.
Yeah, I remember at the 2019 games, people saying that like there was a girl from Saudi Arabia, I think, who got cut after the first event, and people were saying she just paid like $2,500 to do one workout. It's like that's almost as expensive as it is to do open gym in most CrossFit gyms around the world.
I mean, in that year, the cuts were announced. Like people were fully aware.
Yeah.
Just that I think that they were kind of expecting. People were expecting to show up and like, okay, there's cuts, but we're going to keep it nice and inclusive so everyone gets to play.
Yeah.
Well, like they went straight off with, legless rope climbs and running and pretty heavy snatch.
I mean, you assume that that's because Castro was like, I don't want all these people here. So like, he's like, oh yeah, I'll include everyone. And then just like programs.
Probably just a statement like this is the CrossFit Games. And to be fair, like, the CrossFit Games is not really a time for inclusivity, like of everyone. Like it's legless rope climbs and it's and squat snatches, and it was a hard workout, but it is not the hardest workout ever programmed at the CrossFit Games. So I mean, and hopefully the people that did get cut was like, if they want to get back to the games, it was just a wake up call of, okay, I need to work really hard if I want to throw down at that level and stay in the competition for longer.
You I saw Prepared doing a in-person training camp. When's that happening, or how can people get involved in that?
That's in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I think. It's a 16th, 17th of July. It's just we're keeping them really small at the moment, but we're kind of limited to how many people we can have in the gym. But we did one a few weeks back. We did it, and it was like really successful. And just like what we talked about in a previous episode, that I want to try and start CrossFit Walleye in where we train is just, it's getting bigger and bigger. They just expanded again this whole like new room that we can use for training camps and stuff. And I just want to start creating that sort of environment for competitors to come, to Västerås and just train for the weekend and hopefully build into next season where people want to just come for, weeks or even months and be there. But the training camps is just a good sort of insight into competitive training, what it takes to train like a professional athlete for the weekend and get that sort of a taste and excitement of it. I think there's just a couple of spots left. I think we only have room for 8 people plus coaches, so 12 in total.
What did you say the name of the place you live is?
Västerås.
That's like, surely George R. R. Martin just took that for his own.
Yeah, I guess so. They just changed a couple of letters, but it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. So if people want to do a training camp in King's Landing, they just have to.
I really hope that there was like some sort of, I don't know, Game of Thrones museum or something here, but there's nothing. It's quite disappointing, really.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, look, we'll catch up in another couple of weeks, and we'll have the last chance qualifier to talk about it. And we can see if the programming matches up with what we hoped, or if it just flips everything on its head again for the crack.
Yeah, let's see.